Chad is a country that has lost its way. It is one of the poorest and most corrupt nations in the world. Most inhabitants live in poverty as subsistence farmers, trying to produce enough food to survive. More than one-third of their national budget comes from foreign aid. After independence from French colonization in 1960, a civil war began between the Islamic North and the Christian South, tearing the nation apart. The only foreign investment in Chad comes from big oil, which has rarely helped the country. In 2003, the World Bank supported Esso breaking ground in Chad to extract oil. Esso agreed to use most of the money for poverty reduction and social development, but there is no evidence that Chad has received any money. Literacy is a shameful 34%. The under 5 mortality rate is a shocking 169 per 1,000 live births, and the country was 184th out of 187 in the UN's Human Development Index. There is a chronic lack of skilled professionals. A handful of gynecologists, one psychiatrist, and a few hundred midwives, for example, are the reason that 11% of women die during childbirth. Because of political problems, violent conflict, an almost non-existent infrastructure, and the lack of a national government, there was hardly any attention given to development-oriented, long-term economic strategy during the last 3 decades of the 20th century.
With our money, though, we can help Chad get on track to reach economic goals that it has never had before. Chad is a landlocked country whose economy is very dependent on oil. Chad also produces cotton and cattle, and if they could transport their goods in a less expensive way, their export markets would grow exponentially. A railroad from Chad to Cameroon coast would give Chad access to a port where it could sell goods internationally. Since the China Civil Engineering Construction Corp has already pledged to invest $7 billion into this railway, we plan on investing money into roads. Chad has only 50 kilometers of paved roads, making transnational travel impossible. A road system would help build Chad's cities and give more citizens access to the railway. The government of Chad has already made it an initiative to seek foreign investors to revive the cotton industry. With their help, trade partners will help finance some of the costs to give Chad a running start. Another area of infrastructure we are going to invest our money into is irrigation and water filtration. Due to climate change, Lake Chad is shrinking, and an alternative water sources must be found for the country. We'll have to pump water from the Congo River and the Chari River to support Chad's citizens and agricultural economy.
We believe that more transportation infrastructure, less dependence on oil, and clean irrigation methods will be the catalyst to move Chad out of poverty. Most of the women that die during childbirth do so because complications arise, and there is no trained professional there to help. The maternity mortality ratio is much higher in rural Chad because they do not have proper facilities for health. An increased network of roads would allow women in rural Chad to travel to cities in case of emergency, where there are more medical professionals available. When it is easier to get around Chad, people will want to come visit. Chad has significant tourism potential due to its varied landscapes, ruins of ancient capitals, and spectacular scenery in the central and northern parts of the country. More people in the country would help pump revenue into the economy and build up towns. Having clean water will change the lives of many Chadians. Clean drinking water will drastically cut down the number of children dying of diarrhea. More water will allow the crops to better flourish since Chad has been in drought for years. More crops mean more food, allowing for more food for export. With farmers producing more crops per hectare and making more money for those crops, they will have less need to send their children to work. Less child labor means more children in school learning. We hope to educate the next generation of Chad, which we can only do if the country is prosperous. We believe that our plan will make that a reality. We want to spend $1 billion to get Chad less dependent on oil. We will spend $4 billion on roads and $5 billion building irrigation and water filtration systems. We believe that these investments will push Chad into economic prosperity and a high standard of living for all of its citizens.